a big thing happened this week. Like that 30-year regime fell to an end. The Americans previously had said, "Oh, we're going to stop taking Russian uranium in 2028. So get that out." And right now, maybe ask for a waiver if you need it. And so that caused a lot of uncertainty and it caused a lot of delay, I think, in contracting the entire fuel cycle. They bought some Chinese EUP to kind of shore up short-term needs and kind of bought themselves some time. And then we get into Putin saying, "Hey, it's mixed political and economic sense for us to resell this uranium going to America that we sold at $35 a pound to the Chinese at $75, $80 a pound, and they're nicer to us. Like, why would we not do that?"
Hello there, welcome back to the Next Big Rush. I am here with Steve, aka what are we calling you today, Steve?
Just Steve, fine.
Come on. Steve, the dentist who happens to be very knowledgeable about all things uranium. How long have you been invested in this trade?
Too long. Too
Too
long.
long. That is the exact date, ladies and gents. Too long. Probably just like myself. And you actually sent me something privately, which it's funny because like we all follow the same people and we keep sending each other messages of all the people that we're following. And so it's like this, this mix of like the same echo chamber in a sense. But it was a very important I guess update that if you miss it and you're fed up of the uranium trade and you're fed up of people like Steve and myself coming on here and saying this is the best thing ever, the fundamentals are getting better, then I would highly advise you to just read it, take that into consideration, understand what's going on in the market. And if you want to be out of this trade, that's completely up to you. I would like to maybe in 2025 start implementing a more nuanced approach of, if there's something about the market that I don't understand that should be happening, maybe I'll leave a little bit on the table, but not completely remove myself from it. The reason why I'm telling you this right now is I don't know if I ever told you this, Steve, but I bought Bitcoin in 2011. Did I ever tell you this story?
No, I hear the story.
Oh, it's completely heartbreaking. So real quick, I bought Bitcoin under $5 and I made no profit, like zero. Because back then it was such a hassle. There was only one place to buy and sell it, which was
It's
called Mount
still kind of a hack.
Gox. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was yeah, Mount Gox, and it was a complete what show. It ended up not working out if you kept your coins with them because they went bankrupt and the whole thing. And I think they're still ongoing. People are still trying to figure out where the coins went with Mount Gox. It was like you had to go. I had to physically go to my bank, deposit my wealth of 200 euros, which felt amazing at the time because I'm like, I'm doing something. I'm buying, this digital thing. It's like super, early. It was very early adopter stuff. I mean, less than $5, we were sitting here like almost 100K or past 100K. And then I had to like send the money to a place in France or Germany, and then they would send it off to Japan, and then the money would not show up on my account. And I have all these emails going back and forth with them saying like, look, I don't see the money in my account. And I'm freaking out because, like I'm early in my working career. I don't have much money. And I sent 100 euros. I'm like, I've been taken for a ride. This is a complete scam.
Yeah.
And then finally it shows up and I buy it. And I'm like, this is just weird. I don't believe in any of this stuff. I'm just going to sell it all. And so I buy it, I sell it. It was for probably like $4.80, something like that. It's summer of 2011, and just leave it at that. And just forever don't get back into the trade. Obviously, would have made several $1 million out of $200. But what I mean by that is something that I have learned from that lesson very painfully is that if there is something fundamental to the story and you just don't see it play out yet, it might be worth it to keep a small position just to make sure you watch the trade even from afar, so that
Yeah.
if all of these fundamental facts that we've been talking about do come to affect the stocks that you currently own, you are not hating yourself forever for having sold at the bottom. That's all I'm going to say with, my personal war story. And and with that, Steve, What was this message that you sent to me that was so important?
Well, can I follow on with your story real quick?
Please, yes.
So the trade is frustrating, and I think it's because too many of us got spoiled by crypto. Like I did pretty well in crypto, and then I saw it was a bear market, and I called that well. Um, but then I just didn't get back into it because I was in uranium and I was in silver, and I think uranium is probably going to be more like you probably need to hold it, a lot longer than you think. You may have to hold it 7 to 15 years and be okay with that. Um, and so it's not for everybody, and uh, I think it's going to take some time. Like I think you and I in our little group can see things happening, but the broader institutional and retail both. I don't want to pick on retail. Like I don't think that's fair. Like I think there's more retailers that understand the fundamentals in the fuel cycle at a deeper level than there are institutions. Right. Uh, but like things are happening, and that's what I was messaging you about, was like we've had a 30-year regime of Russia slowly building more and more influence and control over the market. And they've been a one-stop shop through like Rosatom and 10X. Like you want EUP, fine, here you go. You want a reactor, fine, here you go. Like you just want fuel and enrichment, you want some SWU, like you want some conversion, we've got it all. Like, and we're going to beat prices. And they were purposely undercutting to gain market share, just like Amazon, right? Like they were knocking off all these mom and pop businesses by just doing it basically at cost, just to become now what they are, right? Huge. Putin was doing the same thing, and been doing it for a long time, and they've been reliable. And so all these utilities now, they've killed their own domestic supply chain, right? Like there's very little production coming out of America, Canada. There's nothing coming out of Niger. Sadly, right?
Sadly, yes,
All the
sadly.
gloverines. Oh
Uh,
man. But Canada, they had to shut down for a while because it was so bad for them. And so, now Canada is probably the cheapest, but because Kazatomprom going up, and Kazatomprom's just going to sell just to avoid, I think it's easier to sell to the people that are nice to them, and the West has not been kind to them.
Absolutely not.
If we're transparent about it. But yeah, a big thing happened this week. Like that 30-year regime fell to an end. The Americans previously had said, "Oh, we're going to stop taking Russian uranium in 2028." So get that out, and right now maybe ask for a waiver if you need it. And so that caused a lot of uncertainty, and it caused a lot of delay, I think, in contracting the entire fuel cycle. They bought some Chinese EUP to kind of shore up short-term needs, and kind of bought themselves some time. And then we get into Putin saying, "Hey, it makes political and economic sense for us to resell this uranium going to America that we sold at $35 a pound to the Chinese at $75-$80 a pound, and they're nicer to us. Like, why would we not do that?"
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody thought, no, he won't do that. They want to be seen as reliable. I'm like, we gave them a force majeure excuse. Like, how daft are you?
Yeah.
And like these fuel buyers, like they would talk to me like, yeah, we don't think they'll do it. I'm like, bro, we don't think you're gonna.
And you
You're
know what?
gonna.
It goes back to what you just said. I want to give credit, like retail investors saw this
They did.
several months before it ever came to pass. I've been hearing about this as a possibility from, the smallest of accounts forever. And I'm
Yep.
like, yeah, maybe, it's viable. It's a viable option for Putin to go ahead and do that. And then it came out. And then now the question is, okay, so Putin says no more uranium for, for the USA. Let's just focus on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then what do you think investors expect it to happen versus what actually happened?
I think they expected uranium to act like oil. I think they expected, if the Saudis made a similar cut, we would have had $400 oil within hours, right? If they just said, we're not going to produce, bye. We would have had, I mean, yeah, you would have gone from 70 to $150 a barrel and real quick.
Absolutely.
And then they would have kept going when they realized how bad it is and like how much dysfunction. I thought we would see a bigger jump, and all those too, but I want to point out that we did see a jump, and the jump actually makes sense, and the jump is actually pretty big. So we saw within an hour of the boat that was picking up, was it the Atlantic Action 2, maybe? Look up his
It
name.
yeah, action 2.
Yeah.
So let me
So
just blow it up on the screen here. I got it easy. All right. So Action 2 left St. Petersburg without EUP only 2 weeks ago, and the consequences are already being felt. It has been a very tiny nerve, and yet it shows that it is a broken market. Let's wait for the real nerves, which will come. Chaos is very close. I love his writing here.
yeah, and it came. I love Borja and Harry Chris. I see them both right there.
Yeah, big shout out to them.
Yeah. It came pretty quickly. A couple of hours later, we heard about conversion jumping $12, from like 90-ish to a little over 100. And I want to point out how big this move is. Like in the bear market, conversion was at $4.
That's
This was
unthinkable.
in an hour, it moved 3 times what the bear market low was. So for us, let's say $20 uranium, just to make math easy.
It's like 60
A
bucks.
$60 move in spot in an hour. And I honestly think we get that sometime next year. I think we have just a giant move where everybody's just like, oh. And the reason I say that is because I think it's Laguna Verde in Mexico, a nuclear plant down there, has started to panic for good reason. They expected that uranium to come to them. And now they have like an emergency action RFP out, because they don't have a next load ready. And there's a couple in across the world, and there's a couple in the United States actually that don't have what they should. They just don't, and they didn't think that this would happen.
So
So
year
we're playing musical chairs. The first one that fell on the
exactly.
butt
That's
is
exactly what's happening. And the funny thing, which is actually the most painful thing about the uranium trade. And you know what? I think a company that is really smart accidentally in a way to have, a bet alongside on this whole thing is a company like Mega Uranium, because they really, like they hold other projects of their own, and they spend a few bucks here and there just to maintain the regulators happy. But they really are just a way to play, the other companies that they hold, next gen and whatnot, whatever it is that they hold right now. I think ISO and all of it, it's really a group of, people who are company builders, and they all have their shareholdings within Mega Uranium. And because this is what I'm seeing, the fundamental thesis for uranium isn't so much a fundamental thesis for uranium, it's for nuclear first, right?
yeah,
And when we talk about that, all we're saying is that because of this thesis that is so nuclear centered and so positive, then we could only assume that eventually uranium is going to catch up and really catch a bit. Now, what's happened, from the numbers that I'm seeing is that it used to be commonplace for utilities just to have more inventory at hand. And as the price has slowly, crept up from 18 bucks to wherever we are now, it means that they have just been using up their inventory, and they've kind of, I guess, changed the game in that they now are quote unquote happy to operate with less inventory, because they got used to having plenty of inventory and cheaply enough, and contracts that were, more towards their way. And so I think the frustration comes from, not having an immediate effect into the juniors that are, by the way, trying to, find uranium, delineate these ore bodies, and they're diluting
Yep.
while the thesis, is working its way. So it's like there's a wave coming and it's 3 kilometers out.
Yeah.
And, if you jump into the ocean now and you can't swim and stay afloat until the wave comes, then you're not going to catch the wave. Like that's it. It's game over for you or for your particular company in a sense. So yeah, I'm not sure I have a question regarding that. Like, do you see anything differently than what I just proposed?
No, I don't. I'll give credit to one of my friends. I was explaining to him the nuclear power thesis and uranium and all this, and he's like, "Well, I'll just buy the ETF, I don't know, it was nukes maybe, but it was just it was like Constellation and Cameco, and I don't, and he's like, I think he bought a little bit of Sput too when it was like at a 15% discount, and everybody hated it and were bad mouthing Sprott, and he's up big, and I'm down, and I'm just like, I missed that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But I kind of thought like, man, uranium's where the problem is. I mean, I understood nuclear was going to grow. I didn't think it was going to grow as much as it has. And uranium will still be, a problem going forward, but like it's just not our time yet. But we'll catch up, and it'll be maybe worth our time. But yeah, having to sit, um, there's a lot of opportunity cost, right, for that time
Yeah.
burn.
Yeah, there is absolutely. And it's, I also kick myself for not participating in the tech side of the business and
Yeah.
not buying Sput. I play in the small juniors, and it's like, okay, even within that thesis, you usually get, the larger companies getting love much earlier on, and then smaller and smaller and smaller. And so it's like we have to understand what we own, why we own it. With gold, I see a better reaction, like when gold really rips. Gold companies, I think they do act on it, but even then, because they still fall within the mining sector, they
Yeah.
haven't really done that hot lately, which I think is a massive opportunity because at the end of the day, there are enough like good development companies out there, I think, in the gold sector that will eventually become a mine because they're either going to produce themselves or more likely they're going to get bought out, and the market is giving them a massive, I want to say 70, but it's more like 80-90% discount in some cases.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, okay, you know why is it that mining stocks in general just are sucking? Like, what's your view, what's your thesis on that?
I honestly think it's because of crypto. I think anybody that with like that level of risk tolerance and appetite just knows that crypto is going to rip every couple of years, and so you just buy the negative sentiment and then you just stay on. I mean, I think eventually between now and 2030, the price will justify speculation again, and I don't think that's too far away because like most of these gold majors, to use your example, their costs are down from a couple of years ago because oil's down, and their profits are at record levels because
Finally.
even if production even if production's not up, gold's well above 2,500.
Mhm,
I'll make money typically anywhere from 17 to 2,200.
mhm.
So their profit margins are now pretty healthy. And I think once in 25 when they start returning larger dividends, I think you start seeing people notice that. But right now, like when the S&P is ripping, the Nasdaq's ripping, Amazon's ripping, Tesla's ripping, Bitcoin's ripping, like
There's too much good stuff going
I
on.
think I think there's enough momentum chasers, and the risk appetite's going to be in crypto and tech for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So
I don't
yeah,
know if you heard that, but my dog agrees. He's like howling. He is
vision and growth.
neither a crypto investor nor a uranium investor. He's out of the game right now. You mentioned that you think that's something like a $60 move, immediate move could happen.
Well,
As I don't want to say early, okay, because I've been in this trade for too long, so not as early as next year, but sometime next year. I honestly thought that we would get to 170 spot price this year.
I did too.
Uh, yeah.
I thought we'd get 135 at least.
Yeah, no, I thought
Especially
we'd
starting
get
the year at 100.
170 and then trend down a little bit and like retest a few different levels.
Yeah.
But the like this time last year, I don't know if people remember this, but this is when I think it was
We're at
December.
90.
Yeah,
Yeah.
December. That's when uranium really started to take off and people were like absolutely, excited about the whole story.
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to take for that to come back?
Man, I keep thinking that people will be able to see it in the conversion and EOP and swing markets, but they don't. Like we just had a $12 jump in conversions. I think it's just gonna have to be spot jumping. And whether it's spot itself jumping or spot going premium nav and buying pounds, I don't know. Either one of those would work. Um, I know some institutional investors are starting to go like McDonald, are starting to push his clients into Uranium because it's liquid. It's not quite as liquid as UEC and Cameco, but it's more liquid than the rest, and it's a way to get exposures to the juniors. Um, so I think, man, I think it's just going to be a move in spot, near spot, just because it's the transparency of it.
Mhm.
Um, I don't like that, but
What do you say? What do you say about the people or the way of thinking? I guess the opinion of spot price doesn't matter.
oh man, Toilet's got a great tweet on this. You can make the argument like that it doesn't matter, and because all the term volumes, but yet all the miners have specific parts of their contract like exposed to spot. It matters a lot to them, and it matters a lot to their shareholders because that's where their profit's going to come from, right? And then it matters to, I mean, any risk buyer, like that now is enjoying Bitcoin and XRP, like they're not going to buy uranium names unless we're moving, unless they see movement and spot. And so like you and I don't have to care, and it doesn't have to matter to to people that understand the fuel cycle, but
But
that's
I
not enough
care.
money. That's not enough of the money to move the equities, is it? So
I
that
guess.
is
I
to
guess.
move the bottom line of the miner's profit. So um
Well, what I say is
fortunately it
that
matters.
yeah, what I say is even if it didn't have anything to do with contracts being signed, because retail watches it, it matters because that's a trigger. And so if I'm whole like let's pretend it means 5% of the market and not the 15-ish% that it usually does.
Right.
Even at such a small amount, if my plan is to sell my shares at a higher price, which it always comes down to, greed and fear, buy low, sell high. Everything that we talk about is just to make us more likely to be able to make that decision of,
Right.
having a profit. If we boil it down to that, and retail investors are looking at that, and they are going to be bidding me up so that I can eventually sell my shares, then I care about it. So my thinking is not so much does spot matter in the grand scheme of things as a barometer for the market. It may or may not at certain points. I think like stocks, it overshoots and it undershoots, and it doesn't keep a real pulse of what's happening in the long-term market at all times. But when it's slow, you see a reflection, people selling off, juniors. And when it rips, then you see what happens to the juniors. And so because of that, I care about it. And so, it's something that I watch. I haven't watched it for a long time. And you can almost always guarantee that if you haven't watched the price for something for a long time, it's not exciting enough. And also you should probably buy more of it. I'm not saying I'm buying more. I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
when you're checking the price of something all the time and you're really excited about it and you're like on it, you should consider taking some off the table because there's too much adrenaline and that's usually a temporary top.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
what do you like out there?
Um, from a value perspective, um,
From an anything perspective, or what don't you like that you see out there?
I actually think buying momentum, or at least having exposure to some momentum plays, whether it's uh, some of the top 5 crypto, probably is smart just because you'll probably get some gains, and you should be disciplined about booking those gains. But yeah, that's a good idea.
Do you think
I
crypto and uranium are a thing that could go together? I've been pitched this before. And
like
I
a company.
didn't, there's like, uranium backed crypto. I've been pitched it before and I didn't really do anything with it because the reaction from people around me was an instant no. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter what I think. If people aren't going to buy it, then, it's not going to be cool and it's not going to go anywhere. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, if it was through like a custodian that could provide liquidity, and there was actually like an arbitrage that you could make, like an actual redemption vehicle, um, it should work and it could work. Um, but it would have to be for real, right? As opposed to just a trading sardine, which, uh, you know, um, without a redemption vehicle, I think Sput can be a trading sardine too sometimes, right? Because like you and I aren't going to take possession, right? So we're just kind of waiting for exposure or
Nobody's going to
something.
be allowed to take possession. That's the problem with this.
Yeah, it has to be like a fuel buyer or
Yeah.
utility or some sort of trader that has those rights.
Mhm.
And so, if it was like on a link contract where there's an actual legal contract and there's actually, so it was like a almost like Sput with a redemption vehicle, but it was through crypto. I think that would be great. And I would think that the miners should start supporting something like that so that they can get a more fair, more realistic, more transparent price. Um, I think all of those things, all of those miners, and you and I talked about this privately before, like they should demand in their contracts to not sell unless they can like transparently do it. Not that they tell who they're selling to,
Mhm.
but like every bit of detail of like, hey,
Report.
yeah, this has to be instantly reported. All the details are out there. Like it shouldn't. They keep working against themselves by agreeing to all this. Like nobody needs anonymity on all those things. Like
Mhm.
sure, we don't line out who the buyer is. Okay, fine. Like that can be private.
Plus, most of
But
the time we don't care. We want to know prices in volume, right?
yeah,
More
but
so than
because
risk
because
on
they've
time.
gone along with that for so long, they've hurt themselves, right? Because
Yeah.
that definitely skews all the transactions to huge delays and to like, well, like next gen, they just did some contracts and they said, oh, we didn't put floors and ceilings in it, but then you see the price sensitivity table and it's like, well, it looks like a $79 floor and it looks like a $150 ceiling, which is great. That's higher than now, and
Yeah.
that's higher than the most recent
That's
Kimiko
good.
contract that's kind of known out there, which is also 80 base escalated and like 135 and some escalation there. But so like we're seeing contracting go up, but it didn't really have any impact on the market or the share price or like until that stuff becomes more transparent. I don't think those miners are going to be understandable to enough investors that the shareholders are happy with the valuation.
I agree.
I guess. Yeah. So I don't
I
know.
agree. I agree fully. So going back to like bird's eye view of this thesis, growing demand more than we could possibly have imagined, and very restricted supply. 10 years down the road, where are we going to get the uranium? How's it going to pan out? How does this end?
It ends with term prices, you know, probably well into the 200s. Not that it like has to be there for them to make a profit, but it has to be there to bring back human capital and to speed up the permitting and to speed up the mine building. Between now and 2030, about a quarter of the pounds that they need, in the later 20s. The mines aren't built, the mines aren't permitted. And the only way to fix that is by very long-term sustainment of much higher prices. So yeah.
I remember the first time you told me of your target of 200. I know we've talked numbers in private a lot, but the
Yeah,
first time I read 200, I'm like, I kind of rubbed my eye on like 200, because this was way, I believe it was way before 60, and 60 was the
yeah,
magic number that we all looked at. And
yeah,
we were like, wow, 60, that's when, production can possibly come back online. We were off by a lot, but that's okay because the inflation caught up with the thesis faster
yeah,
than the thesis did. And now I think 200 is completely inevitable. I do not see a way where we don't reach $200 a pound. I just
yeah,
don't see it happening. Now, I love the fact that if we do see 200, the USA juniors are absolutely going to fly, and I'm invested in that. So, I'm tooting my own horn here and talking my own book, but what are you most looking forward to? Like, what do you think is going to get really exciting? Like once we do hit that, where are the opportunities going to be? Are you looking to, just as the thesis develops, taking some profit, putting it aside, or like, what's your plan?
my exit plan. um
Yeah, if you have an exit plan, because mine keeps changing.
yeah, we're just gonna have to see a couple of years of like a full replacement rate contracting plus 30%, because they've been so far behind for so long. And so until we get into that second or third year of replacement rate plus 30, I just we're
Three
not
years
gonna
of
need a price discovery.
replacement. Yeah, no, forget about 200. I'm throwing that number out the window. I want something higher than that. If we're going 3 years into this.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I'm just and this is, we'll hopefully we can do this next show, but we can look at every single piece of production that could come online between now and 2032, over the next
That's a
8 years.
promise. Okay, so tune in if you have not subscribed to the channel. Shame on you. Don't worry about it. I'm just kidding. Do subscribe and then hit the notification button as well, because then when we come here next time and talk about all the soonish to be producers coming online, then you're going to be able to see just line by line, who's coming online, when are they due to come online, and what kind of revisions have already been made. If we had done this, maybe a year, 18 months ago, it would already look like a very different picture. But we're going to go one by one and see where the production is going to come from, where the supply is going to come from. Who knows? Maybe we find 1 billion pounds hidden in a desert somewhere. I just had to put that out there.
It'll be
Yeah, I look, the background that you have right there, it's perfect. I think you have 1 billion pounds of uranium just hiding right there where you are.
yes.
That's where it is.
Yep, yep.
You're just, yeah, that's our little secret. Steve,
Mm,
thank you so much. Any last words for people who are still in this interesting trade and just want to they want to like understand it better and be able to make decisions going into the next year.
yeah, I would head into Goehring Rozencwajg. Just wrote a good piece about copper and uranium, and just how the supply chain for both over the next 10 years is just we're going to see price discovery, right? And but what that means is, as far as prices, as far as development, as far as human capital. um yeah, just read that, take a break, go play with the kids, and yeah, have a great holiday season. But we'll man, I'm excited for the next show, just because like what you and I see and know about the production market, and then what is still broadly assumed by the fuel buyers and utilities, and just how everything has come to them for 30 years. Like, that regime's over, and that's going to take a while for them to shake recency bias. but it's going to be worth it for us.
For us.
It'll be a little rude for them, I think, but it'll be worth it for us. So just, yeah, sit tight. Yeah.
That's it. So I guess my last few words is I remember very vividly making a post on Twitter and getting, a little bit of hate on from one particular guy who I don't know if he was a fuel buyer or he was in the industry, but not exactly a fuel buyer. And I was kind of putting it out there that it doesn't matter that fuel buyers are smart people. It it doesn't, it's not even a question that affects the thesis whatsoever. It's the fact that they're humans and they act like humans. And so if they need to keep their jobs, which everybody does at some point, they're going to do what is expected of them. And that is the reason why the price has already gone up so much and will go up considerably more, is my belief, because they are not really looking at their jobs as a fiduciary position, right? It is part of their job technically, but they're not traders. They're not hedge fund guys. They are supposed to make sure they have security of supply and that they get their pounds in and that they get the nuclear fuel downstream first, and then eventually they can figure out the yellow cake, and then they eventually really really catches up to you. I feel like this is like similar to me and my to-do list, and there is that one item that, my gosh, like I just don't want to do it. It's something usually to do with taxes or like admin, and I'm like, nah, I'll do it some other day, I'll do it some other day. And then the government sends me a bill for a late fee or something like that, and then I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. Let me see what this is all about. This is what is going to happen with the uranium market. Probably not too long from when you're watching this, if you're watching this at the end of 2024. So let's make it a promise. Do come back, do subscribe, and let's go through the supply in case there's something that we're missing. So thank you very much, everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and we'll chat to you soon.